Greetings and welcome to episode 11 of the Sustaining the Herd podcast, brought to you by Settje Agri-Services and Engineering of Raymond, Nebraska. I'm your host, Andrew Wadle, and I'm joined in the studio by my co-host, Brock Vitek, and our guest, Zach Settje, who we're going to give Zach a chance to introduce himself in a moment. And what we're going to talk about today is livestock facility construction options and opportunities. And so here at Sustaining the Herd, for our long-term listeners, sustainability to Settje Agri-Services means a lot of different things. If you go back to our earlier episodes, we've had environmental attorneys talking about sustainability as it relates to producers operating within permits. We've had people talking about feed and how feed is produced more efficiently and the advances that can be made there. And so sustainability cuts through so many different things in our industry, and financial sustainability is important, right? Because we want to have businesses that are sustainable. And then, of course, we have taking care of our animals. We had Carl Berge last week talking about hoof health and how that affects sustainability. So sustainability to us is a very broad topic, and we're really excited to be able to talk to you about it today. So as I said, today our guest is Zach Settje, an owner of Settje Agri-Services and Engineering. Zach, please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved in the company and your role in the company today.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Andrew. Kind of interesting to be on the podcast. You guys have been having this for quite a while now, and I've just been in the background listening and that sort of thing. So good to be on. Yeah, I started with the company full-time in 2018, 2019, but I've been around it since, as long as I can remember. So my father, Dean, started the company in 1997 at our home place. It's just an expansion of basically the garage on the home place, and they just kind of continued to grow it from there. So I've been around since day one, so to speak, even though I only remember about 3/4 of those years since I was a little kid. So we've given a company overview here in the past on what our company does: livestock facility, environmental compliance, design, engineering, permitting, construction. Is really just that in a nutshell. You've learned a lot about what Andrew and Brock specialize in, and we haven't spent as much time talking about the design and construction of livestock facilities themselves, of feedlots, swine facilities, dairies, poultry facilities, and even a few other type of things. So I'll visit on that here today. As a company, we operate in about 25 different states and currently have done projects in about 11 foreign countries. So we have been fortunate enough to grow over the years, and I just enjoy every minute of it. So when I started full time, I worked in the construction department, started doing some design, some sales, really just a little bit of everything. I actually had the nickname there for a while, and it still comes up on occasion that I am the Zach of all trades here in the company. So that's been fun. And, lastly, besides construction, design, sales, my daily job is chief operating officer. I kind of oversee the daily functions of the business, anything from project management, business structure, financials, all the above. And my personal passion, outside of all those other things, which I really enjoy, is to manage and work with our clients on an international level and to get to travel, get to adapt what we do here in the States to different climates, different cultures, different workforces. I get to do a lot of that, and I really enjoy it.
And Zach, just a fun fact for you, for everybody to know, give a sense for where around the world you have lived.
I've spent a lot of time in, Eastern Africa, Russia, in and out on Vietnam, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Kazakhstan. And I've spent quite a bit of time in Europe too, probably more for pleasure than business, but that's how these things go sometimes. So yeah, we've really touched a lot of places in the world, and it's been really enjoyable.
Excellent, Zach. My first question for you, as we think about a livestock facility construction project, could you walk us through what the different contractual arrangements could be that a client could have with a firm like Settje?
Yeah, so when we look at constructing livestock facilities, whether it's a 2 or 3,000 head feedlot, a 1,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 head dairy, or a 150,000 head feedlot. I mean, we do all shapes and sizes of livestock facilities. What I'd say is we have contracts on projects that are $250,000, $500,000, all the way upwards of, 10 plus $1 million contracts. So we operate kind of all over the board in terms of size of projects. Where we differentiate what we do and what we don't do is it livestock focused? If it is, we're probably going to do it. If it's not livestock focused, we may have a specialty that we can add some value, but that's not our core wheelhouse. As for contract arrangements on these things, there's really two models that we operate on. One is, not new to the industry and probably not new to anyone who's familiar with construction, is general contracting. So we design a project, we bid it out based on the design and the scope, and then we provide a lump sum, not to exceed number. That's fairly common in a lot of projects, especially smaller ones, where we give a final price and we say, we'll see you when it's done. We'll hand over the keys, and this is what's going to cost you. On different projects that I would say range in complexity, size, ownership involvement, or timeline and speed at which we want to build it, we'll look at a cost plus or construction manager type of setup. So the difference there is that we are basically working alongside the owner to select contractors, to award bids, and to sort of manage the project. We still take on all of the construction management, but the owner has a lot more involvement there. And so the difference between the two really is A, ownership preference, B, ability to or preference to take risk, either financial risk or timeline risk, as it applies to our company as the construction manager, or the owner as the one that is financing and paying for it.
Yeah, and of those two arrangements, Zach, in your experience, which one tends to be the most preferred in the industry, and why is that?
Most preferred in the industry, honestly, I think if you've got a project that falls in that $500,000 to $4 or $5 million range, I'd say the preferred contract is probably general contracting, which is again that lump sum not to exceed. A lot of times those are ones where the scope's very clear. Someone comes to us and says, I want to build a 1,000 head deep pit cattle barn, or I want to build a 1,500 head robotic dairy, or whatever the answer is in terms of size of the facility. At a certain dollar amount, general contracting makes sense for both parties. The way I look at it is, someone spending a few $1,000,000, especially family farms and other those types of operations, they want to know exactly what this is going to cost them because they're getting financing from the bank. So that's kind of the answer on general contracting. When it comes to cost plus or construction management, we look at that a little differently. So we've got a few projects going on right now that are large and complex. We're talking 2, 3, 4-year build outs in the tens of thousands of head space range on livestock facilities. And when you get that complex, especially over a long period of time, there's just always a lot of moving parts. And A, it's very tough as a general contractor to nail that down 3-4 years in advance, what a project might cost. And B, it's hard and I understand this completely having worked in livestock facilities, it's hard for livestock facility managers to completely decide and nail down a design that can then be bid out when we're 3-4 years out from operating parts of that facility. Management styles change, preferences change, and the owners want flexibility. They want flexibility in what they're going to get, and to be able to change their minds on some design later and rebid it and that sort of thing. And everything contractually with cost plus construction management is a little bit simpler. It's more flexible, and the owners get their desired level of involvement throughout the project as well.
Sure. So thanks for walking through the different contractual arrangements, Zach. As you think about the most successful livestock facility construction projects, no matter what the contractual arrangement might be, what are some key characteristics of those successful projects?
Yeah, I think, I can tell you all day that good construction management and good timeline management during construction is key, but I think that's fairly evident. Some of the things leading up to construction of a facility are really what make it successful. And by that, I mean permitting, design, and engineering, and having adequate timelines on the front end of basically the day leading up to construction to properly plan that project out. In Nebraska, we have the unfortunate reality, for the most part, of having different county zoning laws in every different county. And so any project in its planning phase in Nebraska can take anywhere from 0 days to a year plus at the county zoning level. We go in the state permitting process. That's fairly predictable, fairly simple in terms of timelines, so we can usually plan on that correctly. But really getting on the front end of county zoning process is a big thing that we facilitate here, and it's something that can really derail the timeline of a construction project. When we get into construction of the projects, honestly, the biggest challenge we face, mainly in building feedlots, is it's a lot of civil construction. It's a lot of dirt work, a lot of underground plumbing, a lot of concrete, and weather patterns severely affect that. We had, I think 2018, 2019, we had an average of 40 rain days per construction season. That doesn't make for a successful construction project, no matter how well you plan for it. The last couple of years, being as dry as it was, we had, a fourth of that. So we are at the mercy of Mother Nature to a point. But planning for that in terms of, material deliveries, customer expectations, and really, when it comes down to it, communicating with the customer constantly that here's where we're at on timeline, and making sure that we meet the timelines that they're expecting.
Yeah, just to follow up on that as well, the engineering piece, and this could be considered a little bit biased because, of course, I am one, but it just seems as though these projects, as they're getting larger and larger and larger, they're not being built off of an envelope, a sketch on an envelope that was done across the hood of a pickup truck, right? And so there definitely takes some higher level of effort to put together a set of plans. And I think the other thing that it does is, once you have a set of plans, you could potentially have something bid as well.
Yeah, yep. And I think an interesting thing to watch in the industry is the advancement in technologies specific to contractors, GPS, those sorts of things. They are extremely advantageous when we're building sites, because now we are always dead on accurate with things like grading, concrete, that sort of stuff. At the same time, to achieve that, you need plans, you need staking points, you need elevations, you need a design engineer to lay all of that out. And so as good as it has made it more complex just to walk into a project and expect you can wing it while you're building it.
Right. And so we just talked about, like, what are some of the key characteristics of a successful construction project. You've been around it long enough to say, what are the pitfalls? What are the things that people really need to watch out for on the planning side and then the execution side of construction?
Yeah, I think selecting a general contractor or the subcontractors that you're working with, depending on the size of your project and how you want to manage it, selecting the right qualified people is probably the most important thing. We have had, in many scenarios, very, very good subcontractors that meet expectations, that meet deadlines. And those are the ones we just continue to work with on all these projects. In the past, though, we've also had ones that haven't met expectations, haven't met timelines, and really just can't perform the work that they sign up for. And so really the most crucial part that we pay attention to now in planning projects is A, finances and how they bid it, but B, can they actually perform the work based on the experience we have with them? The subcontractor industry and the people that we work with are great people, very qualified, and there's a lot of them out there. But you have to have been around these other companies long enough to know how to pick through and find the right ones to work with. So to answer that further, Andrew, just like in any industry, it's all about the people.
So Zach, as we look ahead, we know the agriculture industry is always evolving, and consumer demands are certainly always changing as well. And oftentimes agricultural production, livestock production being no exception, has to adapt to those changes to remain relevant and meet those demands. So I'd like to ask, what do you think a livestock facility of the future will look like? And how will successful execution of building those projects look different than how it might look today?
Yeah, that's a tough question, Brock. You're asking me to predict the future.
I am. I won't hold you to it, though.
No, I think we've seen a lot of different technologies come across the table here at Settje Agri-Services. We represent our clients in design, engineering, construction, permitting, etc. And so we have a lot of new companies that bring technologies to us and say, we would like you to sell these or represent these to your clients, to the livestock industry. And more often than not, our answer is, I think you've got a good idea, but I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if there's value in it to the customer. So some things that we've seen come up lately that I think are here to stay, so to speak. One of them would be roller compacted concrete, RCC, as it relates to agricultural applications. And so for people who don't know, roller compacted concrete is not a new technology. It's not a new concept. The application of it in the livestock industry is not new, although in the United States, it's relatively new. So what roller compacted concrete is it's basically, I'll oversimplify it here, and someone will probably tell me I'm wrong and send me a nice message, but it's basically the same mixture with less water as traditional concrete. You get a zero slump product and you apply it differently, and you basically laser grade it out or GPS grade it out, roller compact it down, it cures, and there you've got a concrete pad or concrete surface that is not much different than traditional concrete, except a lot cheaper to apply because you've cut down on the labor cost to install it quite a bit. We can get into break strengths and different things like that I'm sure some people would like to talk about. But overall, it's similar. It's cheaper to install. So that one's interesting because it's new in the feedlot industry in the United States. It's been around in Canada in feedlots for 15 years or so, but it's new down here. And essentially what we're doing is adding more concrete surface to open lot feedlot pens. Sometimes we're adding, another 30 to 60 foot onto the apron to reach a feedlot pen that's a third concrete, 2/3 dirt, or half and half. And sometimes we're actually designing and building feedlot pens that are entirely concrete. And there's a few advantages to that. I'm not a veterinarian or an animal health expert by any means, so I'm going to avoid trying to spout off knowledge in that area. But the advantages from our perspective in terms of the operation and maintenance of a feedlot are extreme, because now you've got a hard surface in pens. You're not importing and exporting dirt out of pens when you're cleaning them. We've taken manure samples across the state in open lots here and seen anywhere from 50 to 75% ash content. So ash content is essentially minerals and dirt. So you're thinking, well, half the manure that I'm trucking in and out of this facility is actually just dirt. So that's a huge thing just in terms of operational efficiency, and again, animal health expectations and that sort of thing aside. So we've been doing quite a bit of that here in the state and a little bit in surrounding states as well, specific to feedlots. I think it's something that's going to be here for a long time. I think it's something that people are going to continue to kind of try and adopt and slowly adopt, and do a row of pens this year, and then watch how your closeouts and your performance goes, and do a row of pens in another couple of years. So I think it's going to continue to grow. It won't be a exponential splash like some people expect it to be in the feedlot industry, but it's going to keep going. Livestock facility of the future, as you put it, Brock. There's a lot of directions we could take that. I think one of the things that is around in the dairy industry for a long time, and in some swine, and people are knocking on doors with it on beef, but there's nothing substantial built there yet, would be anaerobic digestion. I know you guys have talked a lot about that. To me, all of the other conversations aside about sustainability and this and that, it comes down to adding value as another revenue stream to the financial stability of these livestock facilities. To me, that's probably the most important thing about the renewable natural gas and anaerobic digestion market is bringing those opportunities and options to livestock facilities, because at the end of the day, they've got to make money on it, and if they make money on it, it's money that they're making that they did not have before. So yeah, I think anaerobic digestion has a strong place here in the U.S. and it'll continue to grow. And then there is a lot of I'm just going to call it straight up noise in the ag tech industry as it relates to livestock facilities. A lot of widgets and gadgets that should help producer profitability, should help animal health, should help environmental sustainability, and we've seen a lot of those come through the office here and haven't seen many of them gain traction. And so I think that when we see something that's successful with the ag tech market specific to livestock, it's going to be a bit more holistic, a bit more multi-purpose and all-encompassing. And what I mean by that is it'll probably be a system that can monitor animal health and behavioral challenges and opportunities to improve those. It'll probably be something that can also monitor infrastructure in a feedlot and in a dairy, whether that be water tanks, holding ponds, you name it. And it'll probably also be something that can monitor the human aspect of operating these facilities. So watching, feed trucks or watching patterns that cowboys take while they're riding pens. The list goes on there. But I think when something sticks, when something takes the industry by storm, it's going to have a combination of all those things, and it's going to do it from a single point of infrastructure. It's not going to be adding, trackers and tags and all kinds of different things to animals and humans and feed trucks. I think it's going to be something that is almost set it and forget it from a hardware standpoint. There's some interesting things going on in the industry there that I think are coming, but right now a lot of it's in its infancy.
Sure. Thanks for all that, Zach. And a follow-up from the construction perspective, whether a facility has roller compacted concrete, anaerobic digestion, or some ag tech solutions, or maybe a combination of all of them, how will successful execution of those projects look in the future as projects become bigger in some cases and probably more complex in most cases?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to avoid giving a shameless plug on that answer, Brock, but I think the answer there really is, we have a lot of customers that are family farms, second, third, fourth, fifth generation. And it seems like every time a family farming operation changes hands, the younger generation becomes a bit more interested in, what is their legacy? What are they going to focus on? And so they apply the things they know, which is, things like ag tech or innovations in the space like RCC. And so as those generations focus on improving, building, advancing their feedlots, their dairies, they're going to be a little less focused on how do I build this? How do I permit this? How do I actually design this? And that's really where we come in. And I've got a lot of, personal stories of, family farms who are also friends and colleagues and that sort of thing of mine where, they are incredible operators. They do really well on their facilities, and they typically give us a call when they have, new ideas that they need to figure out how to implement. And so I think, whether you're using our company or one of our competitors, the space of the professional services in design, engineering, permitting, and construction of livestock facilities is only going to continue to grow. As these facilities become larger and more complex, they're going to take a higher level of, planning, engineering, design. Permitting is going to become more of a challenge. Even regardless of if the facilities get larger or not, permitting will always continue to clamp down. That's one thing we all know is the government does not get smaller or less involved. So we're here to represent facilities through the whole process.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, and so Zach, this whole topic of the livestock facility of the future, boy, I'm thinking more and more that could be a whole nother sustaining the herd episode, and because really we need to be thinking about that. And
Yep.
As someone who's on a lot of livestock facilities, something that I think of that what do these future facilities look like, is like, for instance, I was at a dairy last week where they were pushing up feed with a robot. Uh, and this robot just went up and down the feed bunk and it just pushed up the feed all day long. But what does that mean? Well, now you have traffic patterns for robots, and you don't, there's places where you can't have curbs where you had curbs before. And so it's kind of like a whole different way, almost a scary way of looking at things, that a lot of this stuff could be automated in ways that we could have never envisioned just 5 years ago.
Yeah. We designed a beef facility a couple of years back where, and this is a very specific use case, but it just gives us an idea of what the unknowns are. Is we designed that building with a expandable end wall and an expandable eave, so that we could basically add an automated feed kitchen to one side and add a covered feed lane to the other side, with the hopes that all of their feed delivery would be robotic on almost like a tram system, if you will. And it was interesting to go through the process of designing that, because we were basically designing infrastructure with a blank slate of some unknown technology that was just about to come to fruition. So that's always interesting to me, to try to anticipate what's coming, and it's sometimes very difficult.
Yeah. And then the other thing, as I think of the future of design and construction, is how big are these facilities going to get? And they're already larger than I think our wildest dreams were, and we haven't stopped growing. And at the same time, this is the exciting part about sustainability, is that there's never been a stronger focus on animal health and the environment. And so I think these things are pointing in the right direction, both growth and sustainability. And so as we look at construction projects and planning projects, if you could just give words of advice to someone who's planning a dairy or a beef or swine facility, as someone in the construction business, can you just give some words of advice, like do this and don't do that?
I don't know. I feel like I'm not qualified to give the entire audience advice, but no, I think, one thing I've noticed in the construction process is the issues that come up while constructing, whether it's timeline or budget or both, usually come from lack of detail in the design and bidding process. You have to go through everything in a project bid with a fine-tooth comb and just basically sit there and poke holes in it. And that's kind of what I do, in and out here every day. Is I go through a lot of these projects with our team, and I just ask the questions that stand out to me. Ask the questions about, well, hold on, we don't have the proper tie-in between these two designs. Or, okay, so you've got the scope for the entire facility, rock surface here, but who's providing the actual install and grading of that rock? Like there's different things like that I feel like some people overlook by negligence, some people overlook by convenience, and others overlook by not wanting to confront the problem and instead just go for making the sale. And you have to confront every single problem in a design or in a bid package before you try to go make the sale. Otherwise, someone's going to pay for it down the road, and we don't want our customers to pay for it, and we definitely don't want ourselves to pay for it either. And so that's the biggest thing to me, is as we plan out these projects, the level of detail that goes into them just continues to increase, continues to take more time and more experience, and you've just got to spend time on it. You can't get in a hurry and say, well, we've got to start construction next month, so we've got to get this bid out and we've got to buy a building package next week and all this and that. It's like, I could care less if you were going to start construction next month. If this plan's wrong, someone's going to be paying for a large error here. And that's 10 times out of 10 would rather delay a project or not meet start expectations to get it right on the front end. And I'm sure you as an engineer would definitely agree with me, Andrew.
Absolutely, absolutely. We definitely sing off the same hymn sheet. And as we wrap up here, I'm just going to kind of summarize the things that I picked up out of this as far as what helps a project be successful. And the first is, to pick a contractual arrangement that really suits the scale of your project, maybe your management style, and things like that. Whether that's a general contractor arrangement or perhaps cost plus. So that kind of starts with that. And maybe even before that, I think maybe what it starts with is the right people, right,
Mhm.
Zach? It's working with people who are qualified, who are competent, and have a track record for doing what they say that they're going to do. And then it just seems like, it's so cliche, but like with any cliche, the reasons they're said over and over again is because they're doggone true, right? And planning, especially as these projects get up in the 7 figures, 8 figures, a lot of money can be lost really fast in the event that really all the right planning and engineering are not done beforehand. And then the other piece is the future, planning for the future. What are these futures going to look like in the facility? Because probably the facility that you're thinking about building and today, it's not the facility that you're going to be managing 5 years from now in terms of the technology that's coming along. And so I guess it takes a little bit of a crystal ball, maybe to be thinking about where the technology is going and where you want to be.
Yeah, no, it's a good summary. I think the biggest thing, and you summarized it here too, Andrew, and I'll just repeat it again, is working with people that are qualified, and sometimes that's hard to discern. I mean, if you came to Settje Agri-Services and said, "I want to build an apartment complex," and I said, "Yes, that sounds great. Let's do it," you'd very quickly find out that I'm not qualified to do that, right? So working with people that are qualified is one thing, but also just, I mean, I go back to the handshake deal that we quite often make in ag. It's got to be someone that you trust. It's got to be someone that has a track record with other people that you've got good references with, and whether that's a person that's doing any of these services we've mentioned for you, or is providing materials, providing labor, it's got to be someone you trust. The ag industry is extremely small. Everyone knows everyone in this industry. And so if you're planning on working with someone, I guarantee you can find a reference of the kind of work that they do.
Absolutely.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for your time and expertise today as you've joined us and our listeners to look at livestock facility construction, and particularly the options and opportunities in livestock facility construction projects. I hope you know that now that you've made your debut on Sustaining the Herd, that Andrew and I will be bugging you probably many times again in the future to join us for some future episodes.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I think that the biggest thing I would say on this whole topic is we just spent 35 minutes talking about it, and it was about as high level as I could make it to try to pointedly answer these questions. We could spend an hour on each single one of these topics and points that we've brought up, and get into a lot more numbers, a lot more detail, a lot more context. And so, if anyone's listening to this, like, well, man, he just skirted around a lot of questions. It's like I will continue to expand on them. We just need more time.
Very well said. And with that, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us today. We look forward to being back with you again in a couple of weeks for another episode. Until then, thanks for joining the herd.